It's been a while since I posted a video. For some reason, there was an issue with my microphone last week. It sounded all staticky, the audio sounded terrible. Luckily it sounds better, so hopefully we're good to go moving forward. October's already halfway over, the college football playoff rankings are going to be coming very shortly, and we're starting to get a better understanding of who the best teams in college football are. After another fantastic weekend of games, here is my top 25 as we get ready to enter the 9th week of the college football season. Before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. We're halfway through the season, and the Oregon Ducks come in as the #1 team in the country. They took down Purdue this weekend, winning 35-0. Dylan Gabriel threw for 290 yards with 2 touchdowns and had only 4 incompletions on the game. College football is really weird now because I don't know truly who the best team in all of college football is. Now, I guess you could say that's a good thing, but also a bad thing because there's a lot of parity and there's so many teams that are probably worthy of being ranked #1. But up until this point, Oregon has won all of their games, they have a top 2 victory on their resume, so they're the #1 team as of right now. I got Georgia climbing up all the way to #2 after their 30-15 victory over #1 Texas. Georgia dominated this game in the first half, but Texas made things a little bit interesting in the second half. Still, Georgia left with a very convincing win. Carson Beck was actually pretty terrible as he completed only 23 of 41 passes, throwing for 175 yards with 3 interceptions. Luckily for the Bulldogs, Trevor Etienne did it all as he ran for 100 yards with 3 rushing scores. If it wasn't for Georgia's last-second loss to Alabama a couple weeks ago, they would be my #1 team. Ohio State was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Penn State was also off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. This was expected to be a close game, but LSU dominated Arkansas, winning 34-10. LSU's offense did what was expected as they scored 34 points and had 400 yards of total offense, but it was their defense that won the game for them. They held Arkansas to only 10 points, including only 15 first downs and 270 yards of total offense. We know that the Tigers have one of the better offenses in all of college football, but if their defense can have outings like this on a week-to-week basis, they're definitely going to be in contention for a playoff spot. Another week, another close Miami victory as they won on the road at Louisville, 52-45. Cam Ward continues to add to his Heisman campaign as he threw for 320 yards and had 4 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, as a team, the Hurricanes ran for over 220 yards with 2 rushing scores. Now, their defense didn't necessarily do a good job considering Louisville scored 45 points and had 450 yards of total offense, but their offense did enough, and the Hurricanes are 7-0 on the season. This was one of the biggest games in Texas program history, and it was a really tough one. They fell at home to Georgia, 30-15. Quinn Ewers was terrible as he got benched midway through the game in favor of Arch Manning, but Steve Sarkisian opted to go back to Quinn Ewers in the second half. Now, he was better in the second half than the first half, but this was an all-around ugly game from Texas's offense. The issue for the Longhorns moving forward is that the resume isn't going to be all that great. They had 2 top 25 victories at the time, but Michigan and Oklahoma are looking like really crap teams. When you look at the rest of Texas's schedule, I guess they have a top 25 matchup this weekend against Vanderbilt, but is Vanderbilt really a top 25 team? You look at the rest of the way, they do finish the season on the road at Texas A&M, so that might be their best chance of having a quality win for their resume. If not, I don't know how you can make the case this is necessarily a playoff team. Tennessee pulled off the upset at home as they took down #7 Alabama 24-17. Now, I don't know what to make of this Volunteers team because I don't think they're necessarily all that good, but they continue to pick up impressive victories. The offense was scoreless through the first half, but they erupted for 24 points in the second half. You can thank running back Dylan Sampson for that as he finished the game with 150 yards on the ground and 2 rushing scores. This Tennessee offense should be a lot better than what they've been so far, but maybe in the second half they're going to turn things around and they're going to turn into that dominant team many people were expecting out of them to begin the year. BYU needed a last-second miracle in this one, and they got it as they took down Oklahoma State 38-35. This was a back-and-forth game, and the Cougars were trailing in the final minute, but quarterback Jake Retzlaff Metcalf led a game-winning drive. He finished the game with 220 yards and 2 passing touchdowns while adding 80 yards on the ground with a rushing score. Running back LJ Martin led the way with 120 yards on the ground and 2 rushing touchdowns. BYU was picked to finish near the bottom of the Big 12 this year, but they're now 4-0 in conference play and they're 7-0 on this season. The Cougars aren't only making a case at being in the Big 12 championship, they're making a legitimate case to be a playoff contender. The other Big 12 team right behind them is Iowa State, who also needed a last-second drive to pull off the 3-point victory. They took down UCF 38-35. This one wasn't looking good for the Cyclones as they also trailed in the final minute, but quarterback Rocco Beck led a game-winning drive as well. He finished the game with 275 yards and a passing touchdown while leading the Cyclones with 100 yards on the ground and 2 rushing scores. Overall, as a team, the Cyclones ran for over 250 yards for the game and had 4 rushing scores. Just like BYU, Iowa State is 4-0 in Big 12 play and they're 7-0 on the season. Before we get to the rest of my rankings, I'd like to share with you guys how you can make the college football season more exciting and even win some money. I've partnered with Underdog Fantasy to bring you this amazing deal. If you download the Underdog Fantasy app and use promo code Harris, they'll match your first deposit up to $1,000. That's right, they're giving you up to $1,000 of free money. You can choose your favorite players from every game and decide whether or not they'll go higher or lower than their projections. So to add a little extra excitement to every game and win some money, make sure to use promo code Harris for a 100% deposit match up to $1,000 at Underdog Fantasy. You guys can also sign up using the link in my description as well. One of the biggest surprises in all of college football this year continues to be Indiana, who dominated Nebraska, winning 56-7. Now the crazy thing is for the Hoosiers, quarterback Curtis Rourke actually got hurt in the second quarter and didn't even come out for the second half. Well, it didn't matter because Indiana outscored Nebraska 28-0 in the second half. It was the rushing attack for the Hoosiers that got this one done as they ran for over 200 yards and had 5 rushing scores. I say this every week, but shout out to that guy in my comment section when I was doing my hot takes during the summer that said Indiana was going to be a 10-win team. That was probably one of the hottest takes of the entire series, but it turns out he knew something that none of us did. Clemson defeated Virginia by 17, and things got a little interesting late in the fourth quarter, but the Tigers still escaped with a pretty convincing victory. Cade Klubnik continues to look like one of the more improved quarterbacks in the country as he threw for 300 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns. Phil Maffa had another great game on the ground as he ran for just under 100 yards with 2 rushing scores. It was a rough start to the season for Clemson, but they continue to get better every week, and I do think this is the best Clemson team we've seen in quite some time. It was looking like Notre Dame would be on upset watch at the end of the first quarter, but they outscored Georgia Tech 31-6 over the final 3 quarters. Riley Leonard finished the game with 250 yards of offense and 2 touchdowns. After losing in week 2 to Northern Illinois, Notre Dame has bounced back nicely by winning 5 consecutive games. Outside of their win against Louisville a couple weeks ago, they haven't really had a game that's been close at any point. This was a fun back and forth game and was probably a little too close for comfort for Texas A&M, but they went on the road and took down Mississippi State 34-24. Connor Wigman threw for over 200 yards with a passing touchdown, while Le'Veon Moss led the way on the ground with 70 yards and 2 rushing scores. It's a crazy year so far for SEC teams because as things look right now, the Aggies are currently number 1 in the SEC with a 4-0 conference record. They're one of only 2 teams that remain undefeated in SEC play. If the season were to end today, the SEC title game would be between Texas A&M and LSU. So as of right now, although they're not the highest ranked SEC team, the Aggies are currently in the driver's seat to play in the SEC title game and be a playoff team. Kansas State dominated this one as they went on the road and took down West Virginia 45-18. This was a pretty close game at the half as the Wildcats had only a 7-point lead, but they outscored the Mountaineers 28-8 in the second half. Avery Johnson had another fantastic game as he continues to improve every week. He threw for 300 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. It was a massive game for him because the Wildcats didn't really get anything on the ground. DJ Giddens did have 2 rushing touchdowns, but he averaged only 3 yards per attempt and had only 57 yards for the game. After starting the season with 4 straight victories and being ranked number 1, Alabama has now dropped 2 of their last 3 games, and it's nearly a 3-game losing streak because they escaped with a 2-point victory against South Carolina last week. Jalen Milroe did all he could, but it wasn't enough. He finished the game with 250 yards of total offense and had a touchdown, but he did have 2 costly interceptions. Overall, it's looking like this Alabama team just isn't as good as we were thinking a couple weeks ago. Now that I mention it, had they not gotten that last-second victory against Georgia, this would be a team that would probably have losses in 3 of their last 4 games, or like I mentioned earlier, could be potentially riding a 4-game losing streak. Boise State didn't play this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Pittsburgh also didn't play this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. SMU continues to be one of the bigger surprises in all of college football as they went on the road and took down Stanford 40-10. Kevin Jennings continues to be impressive at quarterback as he threw for 320 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, as a team, the Mustangs ran for just under 200 yards with 2 rushing scores. I know Clemson and Miami are getting all the talk among ACC teams, but don't sleep on SMU, who's currently tied for 2nd in the ACC. They're 3-0 in conference play, and they're now 6-1 on the season. Their lone loss came in week 3 against BYU when they lost by 3 points, and as of right now, that loss isn't looking too bad. Missouri needed a last-second miracle to pull off the win over Auburn. It wasn't looking good for the Tigers as they trailed 17-6 entering the 4th quarter, but they outscored Auburn 15-0 in that 4th and final quarter. Brady Cook actually left the game with an injury, got an MRI at a hospital, and came back to finish the game as he threw for 200 yards. This last-second touchdown really saved Missouri's season because they are still 2-1 in conference play and 6-1 on the year. They're going to need a couple things to go their way and probably win a lot more games, but they're still in the driver's seat to reach the SEC title game. Ole Miss didn't play this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Syracuse also didn't play this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. I'm not going to say this is necessarily a great win because I don't think Michigan is all that good, but still an impressive resume booster for Illinois as they took down number 24 Michigan 21-7. When looking at the box score, it's actually pretty remarkable that the Fighting Illini won this game because Luke Altmaier completed only 9 of 18 passes for 80 yards, but on the ground, Illinois ran for 200 yards, and that's where they won this game. When you look at the Big Ten standings so far this year, there's Illinois currently in 4th at 3-1 in conference play and 6-1 overall in the season. They're not really getting discussed all that much, but when you look at the remaining schedule, they have a massive game against Oregon this weekend on the road, but outside of that, their remaining 4 games are all very winnable. I'm just saying if Illinois somehow pulls off the upset this weekend, they could be in the driver's seat to pull off a sneaky upset at reaching the Big Ten title game this year. Once again, I'm going to have Army and Navy ranked as the same because I truly don't know which team is better. We'll start with Army, who took down East Carolina 45-28, moving to 7-0 on the season. Quarterback Bryson Daly has been phenomenal for the Black Knights this year, and you can make the case he's a sneaky Heisman contender. He threw for 150 yards with a passing touchdown while adding 170 yards on the ground with 5 rushing scores. He finished this game with over 300 yards of total offense and 6 total touchdowns. Meanwhile, you look at Navy, and they moved to 6-0 on their season with a 51-17 victory over Charlotte. Quarterback Blake Harbaugh had himself quite the game, but not quite to the level of Army's. He still threw for 120 yards with 3 passing touchdowns while adding 60 yards on the ground. Navy is 6-0, Army is 7-0, and these two teams are off to their best starts in quite some time. I'm going to wrap up today's top 25 with a team that may surprise you, but that's Colorado. They went on the road and dominated Arizona 34-7. Shedeur Sanders threw for 250 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns while also adding a touchdown on the ground as well. For the most part, Colorado has looked really damn good in all but one game this year, which was early in the season against Nebraska. They've looked really good over the past month, and honestly, had it not been for a last-second loss to Kansas State, they would probably be ranked inside the top 15 to 20 of the AP poll. Kansas State is a really good team, so that's a pretty good loss for the Buffaloes, but I do think this is a really good team that people are somehow still sleeping on. Well, that wraps it up for my top 25. What were your thoughts on the rankings? Was there a team that was ranked too high, or a team that was ranked too low, or a team that I didn't include at all that should have been in here? Whoever it is, let me know in the comments down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos all season long, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video and my channel with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.